Welcome to the PioneerCast, where hopefully over the course of the next 10 to 15 minutes, you'll get some insights on either one, how to further develop your leaders, two, how to better forecast and monitor the markets in which you're currently designing or building projects, or three, insights on how to help you develop and further build your business. My name is Dwayne Abels. I'm founder and president of Pioneer IQ. Today is a big day for us. We're kicking off not only the podcast, but a podcast series that we believe will be very helpful and influential into your decision-making process for your business and your leaders over the course of the next several months. We've titled it 2021, the year of transition, given the whole concept of we've gone through everything in 2020. We've defined a lot of things that are changing in 21 for everyone to start to execute and build on in 22 from an owner and a market perspective. We want to be able to help you understand those things, and hopefully through this podcast series, you're able to pick up some of those tidbits and apply them to your team. So in studio today, which is really nice, I've got Keith Prather. Keith and I have been working together for nearly 20 years. He's an economist and a market analyst. More importantly, he's a great man, a great father, a husband, and been a phenomenal business partner for the last several years. And he will be walking us through some of the big influences influencing our business and our industry for 21. And then we'll kick off some specific industries that we're going to dial into over the course of the next several months. Keith, I am so grateful that you're here in person. I'm really glad we're able to do this in person. We've tried this several times back and forth at your home office, and it's been successful, but it's a whole lot more fun being here in person. So I appreciate you being here.
Yeah, glad to be here.
So Keith and I, for many of you probably know this, but for some of you who may not, Keith and I have had a partnership for nearly 20 years or so. We started this when I was 15. Keith was 25. But we've been working there for a long time. And essentially what Keith and I do together is help owners and executives and leaders understand the changes that are taking place in their markets, both industry sectors and geographic markets, help them understand what the timing of those changes likely are and how to position their people and teams to be out in front of those changes. A lot of those insights end up in changing their product offering, their solution offering, and helping their teams be a lot more focused. And a lot of the things that we've been seeing over the course of the last 18 months or so have radically changed. And so we wanted to create this podcast series that's going to help uncover some of those things. So Keith, before we get into all of that, I'd like to give the viewers a little bit of insight on you. Now, I know you really well, but most of them don't necessarily know you. And so I thought I'd ask you a couple of questions, and these may be a little bit off the wall questions, but here at Pioneer IQ, we're all about helping leaders understand what their purpose is and then help them to apply that in their business and more importantly into their community. So a couple of things I wanted to ask you. So out of all the things you could do in the world right now, given your skills, gifts, and talents and your purpose, do you feel like you're living in your sweet spot? Is this it for you?
Yeah, absolutely. It's an interesting question, actually, because I'm following in my father's footsteps in a way. So my dad worked with the Department of Justice, so he served the public side of federal government. And he was in the intelligence collection and gathering and analysis industry, right? So what he would do is he would do it for public side, for the government side, collecting information, national security type issues. Mm-hmm. And so took his job very, very seriously. But over the course of growing up in that household, you learn, you develop an interest in what it's like to be able to know things maybe that other people don't know. Yeah. Even though I didn't know very many of those secrets, right? But I learned how to analyze information, analyze intelligence, and I realized that there's a need for executives in the marketplace to need that kind of information on a private perspective. So it was a calling. I did not get into it until about 20 years ago when you and I started working together, and had developed this sort of like almost like an intelligence community approach for private corporations. And then that ultimately has grown over the years and has led us to this point where we want to try and introduce some market analysis for executives. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's been fun to watch over the years. You bring your market intelligence and an analyst approach to what we do in helping to develop leaders and in helping them to deploy the information so that they can better build their business. And in the midst of all of it, I think it ends up genuinely being pretty fun. both for you and I, but also our clients. And so I'm excited to kind of start this journey with podcasts and continue to feed that information out to a much more broad audience. So looking forward to doing that. So another maybe awkward question here is, how would you summarize your purpose? And secondly, how does that apply into your career?
Well, as you and I know, I grew up in a Christian household.
Mm-hmm.
And so the whole concept of brotherly love, which is not to be weird, but it's just loving other individuals and helping them in any way possible that we can. And for me to be able to go in and give an executive peace of mind about their market, to help them understand what's coming, what's around the corner. Maybe they make a better decision that allows them to hang on to more employees than normally would in a down cycle. Just to see things coming, I feel like I'm probably extending that notion of helping others.
Mm-hmm.
And, typically we try to do it from that honest place in our heart, which is just truly helping others. And, overall, that's kind of what my purpose is in life. So.
Right on. Absolutely. So, one thing that you may or may not know is that Keith and I have been working together for 20 years, but in the midst of that, it seems like we just go a lot of different directions. So I was in a meeting 2 weeks ago with a prospect that I don't know. They're a large national construction wholesale supplier, and him and his COO just kind of go off on, they brought in this economist, and he did this big forecast in front of all their presidents around what's going on in the world and how it's going to affect them, et cetera. And I looked at him and I said, well, who is this? Who is this person? And he goes, well, it's a guy out of Lawrence called Keith Prather. I'm like, holy smokes. We're going a lot of different directions when we're having that type of a unique run in there. So we do a lot. So then the last thing is, Keith and I, you'll notice we have a bit of a rivalry going back and forth. And it's not just because we're both competitive, but Keith went to and still very much values his alma mater, which is Baker University.
That's right, the best.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And then I went to Mid-American Nazarene University, both in the greater Kansas City area. Both of us are very prideful about where we went to school and very much appreciate what we learned there. But we do ride each other pretty hard about that rivalry. Absolutely. Especially come around, I don't know, October-ish. So I'm really excited about this new series, which we've titled 2021, the Year of Transition. Right? We've all been through the chaos, but ultimately what it boils down to is, how can we better communicate to our leaders, to our audiences, exactly what's going on, how to help them understand how it applies to them, and maybe just as or more importantly, how do they deploy this information or these insights coupled with what they're seeing to better deploy their teams and better serve their clients. So we've created this whole podcast series, which will extend out through the whole year of 21. And throughout the series, from today on, we will start to break down most industry sectors in the U.S. We'll give you some insights on how they're changing and how they're transitioning. We're also going to use some of our tools, which we're going to feature here in a second, to show you how we rate, grade, and evaluate certain industries and give you a thumbs up or thumbs down, more or less. So we'll show you several of those things as we go along. So sitting here just a few weeks ago, we announced this whole concept that we believe holds very true and consistent amongst both the global economy and the U.S. economy. But it's this whole concept of 2021 being the year of transition. Just from your words, how would you communicate what we really mean by that?
Yeah, I mean, we're coming out of an unprecedented time. I mean, the last time that the United States was in a situation like this, or actually the global economy, was over 100 years ago, right? It was a 100-year event. And so as we come out of this, we're coming out of a recession that's going to look unlike any other. Already is. We see some industries that were absolutely flat, absolutely on death's door, if you will, and then absolutely snap back overnight. And we have industries emerging at different rates. We have a global crisis when it comes to supply chain, the availability of commodities. We have a new crisis in finding labor. We went from nobody having a job to now we've got nearly 8.5 million, almost 9 million jobs open in the U.S.
Right.
And a lot of those in the construction sector. And so we're going through a series of absolute extremes that managers are actually getting whipsawed by. where 1 minute it's down, next minute it's go, and they don't necessarily know really what's around the corner. So is this going to last for the next 5 years? Is it going to be the next 2 months? Or how exactly does a leader respond? How do they build the business back? What sectors are going to start to take off? Which ones are going to be hot? Which ones are not? So there's just so many different things to process coming at them all at one time. And so I think what you do is so critical, because you help them find that center, you help them find that balance to be able to process, handle the information that they need, to be able to analyze it and understand it, and then chart a path through.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd say one of the biggest challenges that we faced over literally since about March of last year, right, when the pandemic hit, was helping leaders to understand that there are tons of disruptions happening, frankly, all over the U.S., all over the world. But more importantly, helping them to understand how to see those disruptions as real opportunities, right? And so everything from COVID-19, the supply chain breakdowns, to the political environments, to the social movements and all the things that we have going on. But through all of that, I think our greatest leadership challenge was helping people to see the reality and the opportunity of the opportunities. And so we're going to focus on that quite heavily. So when we think about 2020 and we think about some of the significant challenges from a leadership perspective, going back to many of the things you just talked about, our greatest challenge was constantly helping leaders to see the opportunities that are rising out of the distractions. And quite frankly, one of the things that we talk a whole lot about is how needs are changing. And if you are a purpose-driven leader, if you are an executive, a design professional, a construction professional, wherever you're at on the spectrum of our industry, if you're a person who's genuinely focused on serving others, serving other companies, serving industry, serving your community at whatever level, and you're motivated by that, 2021 absolutely is your year. This is the year for folks like us to stay aggressively in front of our markets, to stay aggressively in front of prospects and customers, and start to truly understand how their market's shifting, how their clients are changing, how that affects their business plan, how that affects their facilities plan, and ultimately is going to drive growth over the next 5 to 10 years as they start to move forward. So I want to show you a couple of key graphics here. So one of the things that we've been able to capture from the thousands of surveys that we've been doing with our clients all through COVID, as we survey their clients and interview many executives, is simply this concept here, is what we call the chaos curve. And so at the end of the day, if we're all focused on serving the changing needs of our communities and our owners and our clients, then what we're going to very quickly realize is that we're in a moment in time right now that's really rare. And we've talked about this a lot. But the gist of it's really simple. You were going through life, and the whole objective for many people is security and happiness, right? And so we going through life, all of a sudden, some sort of a chaos or disruption hits, which causes a ton of stress. And at that point, one of two things happens. A, they find a solution, and everything goes back to nice, stable, and easy street. Or, like we had last year, many months last year, we start getting disruption after disruption. And ultimately, many owners that we've interviewed, that we've surveyed, and that we've been able to communicate with over the last several months have gone into what we call chaos mode. So chaos mode is a situation where everything that they've built their plan around has ultimately changed. Their plan is, for the most part, irrelevant, and they're in this mode of chaos trying to interpret what just happened, assess what the current situation is, and then transition into developing a plan to be able to get back on the road to stability. The opportunity that we have is really rare, because in chaos mode is one of the only times where people, owners, decision makers, etc., are willing to look at a new service provider, a new team, or a holistically new solution. So this is a big emphasis on for us and our clients as we help them to move forward. Chaos mode is one of the rare times where you can unseat an entrenched partner and ultimately slide in as a new service provider or a new business partner to an owner who's still in that chaos and trying to figure out how to recover type of a mode. So we believe this to be very significant for many of the organizations that we serve. it's also truth in, frankly, every industry that we have been monitoring. So a couple of questions that we think are really critical for you to be asking yourself right now, especially as you start to serve owners, is if you are an owner of an organization that utilizes design and construction services, key question you need to ask yourself is, how are your needs changing? And if you're a professional in the design or construction industry, the key questions that we have to ask ourselves is, how are our clients' needs changing? And again, it gets into, how's their market shifting? How are their customers responding? How's that affect their business plan, their facility plans, and essentially how you serve them? All right, so in the process of communicating these insights to you over the course of the next several weeks, we're going to whip out some of our tools that we use on a daily basis. And I'd like for Keith, if you would you mind sharing with us how some of these pieces work, and even get into some of what we're going to cover?
Yeah, so absolutely. So like when we think about the commercial construction sector, we're going to have a podcast focusing on just what the commercial construction outlook is. But then what we'll do is we'll also do a write-up in the background, so a written briefing. And we'd like to use visuals like this where they serve a dual purpose. So it looks like a simple speedometer, right? But what we do is we use color to denote exactly sort of what the current temperature of that industry is. So green is, it's kind of a growth industry. It's a little bit of go, go, go. Yellow is, we're seeing signs of either a shift. If it's been a weak sector and it's yellow, it means that we're seeing that shift possibly to green, but we don't quite see it yet. It's coming. So if we look 3 to 6 months out, we would say there's a change coming. And likewise, if it was a green sector and it's now yellow, we would also provide some commentary that says, okay, we got to watch out. There's some things happening that we think could pull it lower. And then obviously red is an industry that's not growing yet. But then we also use the speedometer, the actual gauge on the speedometer, to give you an idea of sort of like the rate of growth. So you see in the top right there, you've got a gauge that shows it to the far right and almost at 100%, meaning we're growing historically at a level we just haven't seen before in a particular industry. So, right now that might apply to someone in the lumber industry, right? Whereas the green one right below it, though, is an example of one where it's growing, but it's moderate growth. Okay. So still positive, but there's still a degree of, it could be faster, could be heating up a little bit quicker than it is. So that's what we're doing. Again, we're looking forward. So we're trying to give you a 6 to 12 month view of that. And so this is just one of the simple tools we'll use just to visually help you get it quick, get the notion, and then be able to move on. And then the 3 sectors that we have coming up, first of all, we're going to hit commercial construction, transportation, warehousing. So not just U.S. logistics, but I think we ought to touch on global logistics. And then we'll hit manufacturing and industrial production. For commercial construction, a couple of things are happening real quick. We'll just give you some value right here. But we're watching the return to work and the return to offices. Right. And, a couple of things that we're seeing is that, about 6 months ago, to show you how quickly it's transitioning, 6 months ago, there was some speculation in the marketplace that anywhere from 20 to 40% of workers in the United States would never return to the office. Well, now, just a few months after that, we're now starting to see some trends emerge where executives are feeling disconnected from the workforce. That need to have people around you, the need to build creativity. They're seeing productivity numbers that aren't quite where they want to be. And so now you're starting to hear some big names in the industry say, we're probably going to bring back anywhere from 90 to, maybe 85 to 90% of our workforce is going to go back to the traditional in the office, the way we were prior to the pandemic. So when we think about it from a commercial construction perspective, very quickly over the next couple months, you're going to start seeing that work from home. You're going to start seeing commercial capacity really start to get sopped up, and then we're going to see some emerging opportunities, especially in certain markets. So that's just one of the things that we would be talking about as we go through these next podcasts. Absolutely.
So there's been all kinds of speculation, concern. I might even describe it as some freak out mode, right. Because some of the statistics that we've shown throughout COVID was literally showing, nationally an 80% vacancy rate, right. In a lot of these buildings. So we have a lot of contractors, architects, engineers who serve those types of owners and build those types of structures. So we'll certainly get heavily into the commercial market. As Keith mentioned, we'll hit industrial manufacturing, which is another just exploding, exciting market, frankly. I think there's right. so many great things going on there. And then we'll hit on a few others as well. But again, this is essentially throughout the course of 21, which is where we'll be building into most of this. All right, so a couple of questions that we always want to leave with before we exit. One, how does it pertain to helping you to develop your leaders? And two, how does it pertain to helping you to build your business? So first and foremost, what I would say to you in terms of developing your leaders is the absolute most important thing that your leaders need to be focused on right now is staying in front of their customers and in front of their prospects to understand how their needs are changing, how their business plans are shifting, and what their needs are in order to make good decisions on what the next 1, 2, 3, 5, maybe even 10 years is going to look like so that they can build a new plan. How that applies to you building your business, a lot of that insight you'll be able to directly capture that will help you understand new ways to serve those clients. It could be new technology, could be new services, could be new consultancy that you're able to introduce to them. But that insight will provide a lot of evidence for you to better serve your clients. At the end of the day, more so than I've ever seen in 24 years of doing this, there is a significant need out there with your employees, with your teams, with your customers, and in your community. Whatever you do, make the choice every day to step up and lead, because it's really easy right now, me included, to take the easy road and just focus on management. Until then, lead on.